let's resume the workshop. So today, when we were organizing the program, we thought that we should have some case studies as well. So all of you went through about 6 or 7 odd lectures on systems analysis and systems dynamics. So here is a great example of how to apply these concepts, all of the modeling that we've learned, all of the optimal control, by the way. So Elena in her lectures did mention optimal control and introduced the basic framework for you. That makes your job maybe a little bit easier. So Dr. Sanval, who is at the Department of Economics here at LAM, and also helping us out with the center, a very active member of the center, is going to talk about the application of those optimal control optimization like modeling technologies, but applied to groundwater management. So over to Dr.
Thank you, Abu Bakr. First of all, I actually would like to acknowledge Abu Bakr because it's because of his enthusiasm that this center is what it is right now, and he's allowed us economists space to actually do our work in an interdisciplinary manner. So I'm really grateful for him to sort of encourage us in that way. So thank you, Abu Bakr. So basically, the title of my presentation is a little deceptive. And it's deceptive because I recognize that optimal, if I do not go into the mathematical, if I don't go into a rigorous, okay, that's better. So if I don't go into a rigorous treatment of mathematics, then I'm not doing justice to optimal control theory. So it's a little deceptive in the sense that I'm going to go into some details of the economics involved in groundwater management, and then talk about sort of optimal control techniques in sort of looking at the long-run steady states of our solution. So kind of introduce this method of understanding economics behind groundwater management. But before I do that, just to motivate the talk, I want to sort of acknowledge this comment or question raised a couple of days ago by a gentleman who was in the audience. And that's a very, very pertinent question. And the gentleman essentially asked that we're talking about development of technology in this country, right? So all kinds of technology, helping farmers, sort of helping them understand the sort of science behind what they're doing, and perhaps even helping them improve efficiency of their input use or irrigation. The question is, what kind of incentives are present so that farmers actually end up adopting those technologies? And the person sort of used the word bottleneck, that are there these bottlenecks to technology adoption? And I think that's an excellent question. Because as economists, we tend to think of natural resources, especially water in our setting and in our environment, as a very scarce resource. And when this scarce resource is not priced properly, there are absolutely no incentives for farmers to actually conserve that resource. So no matter what kind of technologies that you put into the market, farmers might not have incentives, would not have absolutely any incentives to adopt those technologies because they're getting that resource for practically a zero price. So as long as the resource is not priced efficiently, effectively, there aren't enough incentives to conserve the resource in the first place, and B, then there is this loop, this feedback effect where there aren't any incentives to actually adopt those efficient technologies either. You can think of it in terms of electricity, right? Electricity prices in this country have skyrocketed. It's really expensive. It's about 15, in peak hours, it's 15 rupees per unit, 9 rupees per unit at off-peak hours in Lahore. And compare that to electricity prices elsewhere, and there's a significant premium that we pay. And what are the incentives that we have? Because our electricity is expensive, we have this incentive to actually invest in more efficient air conditioners. We've gone away from that world of window ACs, and now we invest in these sort of, what are they called? The inverters, splits, etc. Because we know that, pricing hurts us where it matters most, which is our wallets. And because it's so expensive, we have these inherent incentives to kind of invest in more efficient technologies. And that's one of the biggest problems in our country, is that we talk about technology, we talk about efficiency of resources, etc. But when it comes to the economics, when it comes to pricing the resources, we're all very quiet, right? Surface water, abysmal pricing. 150 rupees per acre per year. That is just shocking. And I'm going to talk about how groundwater, when I introduce this optimal control theory and apply it to groundwater management, I'll show you that even though we think that farmers are paying for groundwater, which is true that they're paying for the extraction of groundwater, that is not sufficient. Because resources have to be allocated in a dynamic sense over time. So it's not just the extraction of groundwater that matters. What also matters is the fact that when you extract groundwater today, there is less groundwater in the future. And that groundwater will yield benefits in the future as well. So if you take all of it out today, you won't have many benefits left in the future because you haven't left that resource for future generations. So there is this opportunity cost of using water. Opportunity cost is an economic term, and I'll introduce that later. But there's this cost associated with using resources in the present that are enforced on future generations, which have to be accounted in the pricing in the present. Okay. So and I want to just go next 10 minutes, give you a small sort of crash course in economics, and then come to the groundwater model. Okay, so we start off by sort of recognizing that natural resources are scarce commodities, right? Like any good. So our planet Earth is a closed system. There's only a finite amount of resources that we have. And these finite amount of resources have to be allocated in some sort of fashion across users, across consumers, across people. So when it comes to private goods are things that are sort of bought and sold in markets, right? Those are observable markets, where you have observable prices. I mean, those we tend to not run out of private goods because the market sort of adjusts itself. If there's an increase in demand, if people want that good, they want that good, and then there's this shift in the demand for that product, what happens? The price goes up, right? So the market adjusts itself. When the price goes up, certain people who can't afford that good, they leave the market. Unfortunately, when it comes to natural resources, we actually do not observe markets, right? And these resources, so for private goods, we have this market system to allocate these goods across consumers, goods and services across consumers. But when it comes to environmental goods, environmental and natural resource goods and services, which also have to be allocated just like private goods, we don't have this market mechanism to do that. So we don't actually observe prices for natural resource goods. In a lot of cases, we don't observe prices for environmental goods and services. So we need to allocate these scarce resources, environmental goods and services, to make societies better off. And as I said earlier, we also have to ensure that when we try to make society better off, but it's not just us, it's our future generations that also have to be made better off. If we end up consuming all the natural resources and environmental goods and services, our future generations might as well be dead. So we need to think about how do we sustain this planet of ours, and how do we sort of leave enough resources for our future generations. So as economists, and I consider myself as a dilettante economist, so I'm no expert, but we sort of strive to find the best way to allocate these resources, not just in the present, but across multiple time periods. So that's the idea of sustainability. How do we sort of allocate our environmental goods and services so that there's enough left for future generations as well? Okay. So one of the very basic components of understanding, allocation of resources has to do with this concept of willingness to pay. So willingness to pay, or marginal willingness to pay, which is basically your willingness to pay, which I'll define in a second, for an additional unit. So this is marginal analysis. So basically what this is saying is that when you consume goods and services, either private goods and services, or they could be environmental goods and services, you are implicitly attaching a value to these goods and services. Okay? implicitly, inherently, you value goods at a certain monetary level. That's a value, inherent, implicit value that you attach to goods and services. So the value that you place on an additional unit of a good is your marginal willingness to pay. You see my point? Because you're willing to pay, suppose, okay, let me give you an example. Okay, I'm starving, and suddenly somebody offers me this nice, juicy hamburger, yeah? So my value for this, I'm starving, I have this nice, juicy hamburger in front of me. I might value that burger at, let's say, $100, yeah? Now, because, I'm starving, it's my first burger, I really want it. Implicitly, I'm valuing this burger at $100. So you can say that I am willing to pay $100 for the first burger that I consume. Okay? So, but then what happens when you so now I have that juicy hamburger and suddenly that person presents me with another juicy hamburger. So, well, I've had one already, I'm kind of satisfied, but I'm still, I was starving, I might have a little space left for another burger. But because I've already had one, the value that I attach to the second hamburger might not be as high as the value that I attach to the first hamburger, right? So I might value the second hamburger at, let's say, $80. So the first burger was at $90, the second is valued at $80. So my marginal willingness to pay for the second hamburger is $80. So for the first hamburger, the marginal willingness to pay was 100, for the second is 80. So do you see how this is a decreasing function? So this comes from basically the law of decreasing marginal utility, that basically as you increase consumption of a good, that the utility, the additional utility that you get from in consuming additional units of a good goes down. So this is the law of decreasing marginal utility, and hence your marginal willingness to pay for private goods as well as environmental goods and services is downward sloping. And you might have heard the word demand, right? We talk about demand all the time. Demand and supply, that's Econ 101 basically. So the demand function is basic, or what we call, so the demand function relates the quantity of a good to its price. But if you invert the equation and you write price as a function of the quantity, then that's what we call the inverse demand function. Okay? So demand is at each price, how much of that good are you going to consume? Okay? And if you invert the function, you'll have price on one side and quantity. If you relate price to quantity instead, that's called the inverse demand function, and that's essentially your marginal willingness to pay. Because it's showing that at each price level, that price level actually reflects values. What are you willing to pay for an additional unit of the good? Okay. So now, when it comes to private goods and services, as we sort of spoke, as I talked about earlier, we have this concept of markets. That's where suppliers of goods and services and buyers of goods and services meet and negotiate prices, and suddenly the market going rate for that good and service is sort of you can observe that in a marketplace. Unfortunately, when it comes to environmental goods and services, we don't observe markets. Okay, in a lot of cases, we don't have these markets where environmental goods and services can be traded, and those values can be effectively measured or observed. So, what do we do? What do we do? Anybody? You have any ideas? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So let me come to that actually. So, well, to measure environmental goods and services, we have these two broad techniques. So the first one is what we call the reveal preferences technique, okay? So as the gentleman here mentioned, that you can relate the value of environmental goods and services to something else that's tied to these goods and services. So for example, in this technique, what we call hedonics, what we do is we look at land prices, okay? So now think about a plot of land next to the airport, okay? There's Askariten, I believe, next to the airport. So think about like a plot of land in Askariten, which is right next to the airport, and the same plot of land somewhere else, far away from the airport. Which plot of land do you think is going to be more expensive? Sorry? Near the airport is going to be expensive? Far away, right? And why is that? Exactly. The same plot of land that's next to the airport, there is an externality because there are all these loud, big planes landing and taking off every second, right? So now that adds as an externality, noise pollution. So that externality, that pollution, the price of that is going to be reflected in those land values. So that land, the value of that land next to the airport is going to be lower than the same sort of, if you look at the another plot of land with the same characteristics. Okay? Well, now that's a very generic example because you have to control for a lot of other factors as well. So when people do this kind of method, hedonics, they're controlling for location near sort of markets, schools in the vicinity. So if you control for all these other factors, you try to isolate the effect of pollution or the externality itself, and you'll see it has a negative effect on land prices.
And again, purpose of utilization is also considered.
Sorry?
Purpose of utilization. For which purpose you are using that piece of land?
Piece of land. Here I'm talking about residential plots, but you're right as well. Yeah. So that the utilization of land, for example, if it's a agricultural land, perhaps those prices might be lower than if it's a residential plot or a commercial plot. But we're controlling for those factors. We're just isolating the effect of the externality there. Okay. So all those other characteristics are held constant across these plots. Okay. Then there's other method, the travel cost method. So what do we do? So basically, we travel to scenic, beautiful places, right? Why do we do that? We do that because we want to kind of, see the environment, breathe fresh air, like absorb the natural beauty that our planet has to offer. So when we travel to those places, we're making expenditures to go see, or as we economists call it, consume environmental goods and services. See my point? When you paint, for example, let's take the example of Hunza or like Skardu in Pakistan, right? These are beautiful scenic places in the Karakoram. You've got the Himalayas there, the Hindu Kush Mountains. You go in there to consume such environmental goods and services, but you're making these expenditures, right? You're buying, you're spending money on an air ticket, you're spending money on hotels, on food, etc. So implicitly, you these expenditures on traveling to go see an environmental good and service or to consume environmental good and service kind of reflects your willingness to pay for those goods and services. Okay, so the travel cost method, you essentially look at how much people are spending on traveling to go see environmental goods and services, and then sort of elicit people's willingness to pay for those goods. So I've already mentioned Hunza and Skardu, but for example, Baltoro Glacier, it's a glacier, it's a water body, right? And a lot of people want to go to Baltoro to see this massive glacier. So the amount of money that the expenditures on traveling to see the glacier is effectively their willingness to pay for this body of water. But this is in frozen form because it's a glacier. Similarly, if you go to Kinjur Lake in Thatta in Sindh, if you go see that from Lahore, you are making, you have expenditures on going to travel to go see this lake. Now here we have it in liquid form, so you have this body of water, you're traveling to go see it, so that's your expenses will be a reflection of your willingness to pay for this body. Similarly, you look at the example of Indus Delta as well. The other sort of broad way of valuing environmental goods and services is what we call the stated preferences technique. The other is revealed preferences. Revealed because prices of something else are revealing your willingness to pay. The fact that you're making expenditures to go see an environmental goods and services and revealing something about your preferences, right? So that's why the previous method is called revealed preferences. This is called stated preferences because here you go and ask people directly, what are you willing to pay for each unit of an environmental good or service, right? So that is basically, you do that through surveys and questionnaires. So this is a stated preference technique because you are just stating your preference for these goods and services. Okay, but of course the question has to be designed effectively. They have to design the questions properly. You want to make sure that you don't get bizarre answers. Like these are rational answers. So there's a whole body of literature that looks at the proper design of stated preference surveys and questionnaires. Now the cool thing about stated preference techniques is that it captures both use and non-use values. Okay, so the distinction between the two, use values, in that reveal preferences, because you are using land, right? The fact that you're looking at land price, you're using land, so that gives you an idea of like the willingness to pay. Because you're traveling to go see something that you're using, so that's the use value, because you're actually using that environmental good and service, you're consuming it. But in a stated preference technique, you don't necessarily have to use that environmental good and service to get its value. So for example, I have never been to, I've never seen a Gubara busted, for example. Okay, so Gubara busters are in sin, and all these Arab sheikhs are coming in and killing off our precious endangered species, all in the name of like gain. But so soon we won't have any Gubara busters. But the fact is, I've never seen one, but I still, if you were to ask me through a questionnaire or a survey, am I willing to pay to save a Gubara bustard? I might say, yeah, sure, I'm willing to pay like $10 a year to like save a Gubara bustard. Why not, So but I've never seen the Gubara bustard. I've never used this environmental, if you think about animal species as an environmental good, I've never seen Gubara bustards, but I'm still willing to pay to save it. So that's why through these sort of stated preference techniques, through these questionnaires and through these surveys, you're able to elicit responses for things that you might never have used. A classic example is polar bears, right? Polar bears are found in the Arctic circles and in Canada, etc. I've never been there, I've never seen, the only time I saw a polar bear was at the San Diego Zoo, but if you were to ask me, and so with glacier melt, etc., the number of polar bears is going down. The idea is, are we willing to pay something to save polar bears? So I've never seen a polar bear in my life, but I am willing to pay to save that species. Right? So that's why through these sort of stated preferences techniques, we're able to capture both use and non-use values. All right. So now, as I said, earlier, like my presentation is sort of a mishmash of different topics because I did want to introduce these sort of essential economic terms and terminologies. But coming to the sort of focus of my talk, which is groundwater management, so groundwater is a scarce renewable resource, right? So sort of we see, so there might be a natural occurrence of groundwater, but a lot of times the aquifers are filled through sort of natural surface water recharge. So in Pakistan, for example, our groundwater, because it gets filled up by rainfall, so rain falls, a certain portion of it sort of seeps into the aquifer, and then of course we have this really extensive canal infrastructure, right? And through unlined canals, a lot of the water seeps through the canals and sort of regenerates the groundwater stock. So that's why it's sort of renewable. But it's scarce because our surface water supplies are dwindling as well, right? So there's a very variable supply of surface water. So over time, as glacier melt increases, there might be a drastic increase in surface water supplies. But once our glaciers run out, there might not be enough surface water to recharge our aquifer. So that's in that sense it's scarce, and it has to be allocated somehow, right? So economics is all about allocating goods and services. Groundwater is a very important environmental good, and we need to allocate it somehow. And not just for us, but the fact that in the future, this, because of these dwindling surface water supplies, there might not be enough surface water to replenish our aquifers. We need to make sure that future generations have enough of this groundwater left. And we need to take those decisions today. So how should we allocate groundwater? Well, you can extract all of it today, but of course that means there's nothing left for the future generations, and then, so there you can sort of, there'll be nothing left for them, and so the whole idea of sustainability, etc., sort of goes down the drain because we've used up all these resources today. All right, so we need to think about allocating groundwater across time periods, and this is, in economic jargon, is what we call sort of dynamic allocation or efficiency. Okay. Another sort of important term before I get to the modeling bit is the marginal user cost of groundwater. And as I said, that we need to think about allocating water across time periods. We also need to kind of understand what that means in the context of extractions in the present. So the marginal user cost, as I said, that the value of water is not just the cost of water is not just the cost of extracting it from the ground. It's also the fact when you extract it today, there's less left in the future, right? So that cost somehow has to be reflected in the price of groundwater in the present. So the fact that in the future, if you extract groundwater today, there's less groundwater left in the future, which means that water could have been used to generate benefits, right? So because we've extracted that groundwater today, there's that effect on future benefits because there's less groundwater left in the future. So the discounted value of that loss in net future benefits because of your extraction today is what we call the marginal user cost of water. Is that clear? And we call it discounted because those benefits are accrued in the future, right? So the $100, if I were to give you $100 today, a choice of $100 today or $100 next year. So what would you choose? Today, right? Why? Because? Yeah, but the value today, why? Because you can take that $100, put it in a bank, 10%, you get a $10 interest on it by next year. So that $100 is probably, if I were to give you $110 in the next period, you will be indifferent between $110 next year and $100 today. So because those benefits, if I extract groundwater today, there's less groundwater in the future, which means there's going to be an effect on net benefits in the future. So because that's the future, we need to discount those net benefits. Discount it in the same sense that we just mentioned. So those net benefits seen in the present are of lower value. Okay? All right, so the price of groundwater not only excludes the extraction cost, that cost of taking the water out of the ground. In Pakistan, we're all concerned about, oh, water is so expensive because we're like, oh, paying for the extraction cost. But the idea is there's less of it left in the future, right? So that user cost that we just spoke about, or I just spoke about, that marginal user cost has to be reflected in that price as well. Okay. So now, before we get to the sort of models, I just wanted to talk about sort of two regimes of groundwater management. So this is the sort of status quo, open access resource. This is the status quo in Pakistan. So it's an open access resource because as long as you have the capital to invest in a tube well, you can put a tube well or a pump and extract all the groundwater, right? Correct? There are no restrictions, laws governing your use of groundwater. As long as you have capital, you can put a tube well and extract that resource. All right? So there are no property rights over water or over groundwater. You can, if you have a plot of land, well, you can sort of argue that it's tied to land, but except the thing is, it's not just when you put a tube well, you're not just extracting the groundwater under your own land because it's a large aquifer and everything's connected. You're extracting somebody else's groundwater too. So, with all due respect to Nestle, they're one of our, they're doing some amazing work. But Nestle has a plant in Shekhupura where Nestle is a big multinational. They have, capital to invest in great technologies, and so they've invested in pumps. They've invested in filtration technologies. They're pumping out the water and selling it back to us at a large premium. But who owns the groundwater, right? So that's the question. Does Nestle own the groundwater? Do we own the groundwater? Do people of Shekhupura own the groundwater? Like, where are those rights? It's a valuable resource. And who's getting paid for it, right? Are we being compensated for that use? So these are the kind of questions that we sort of need to ask. So in the status quo, we have this open access resource. As long as you have capital to invest in a farm, you can put your tube well and extract that resource. Alright, so compare that to what we call optimal management. So optimal management, and this is, this ties into this idea of optimal control, is that we think about this, we assume that there is this forward-looking, benevolent social planner, yeah? And the social planner recognizes that yes, our extractions in the present are awful, like we need to think about sustainability, we need to leave enough of these resources for future generations. So what does the social planner do? So the social, as we've already discussed, the social planner somehow has to enforce that marginal user cost of groundwater on groundwater users. So the margin, so what the social planner, this benevolent social planner is doing, is looking at, okay, so we're using groundwater to generate benefits, not just in the current period, but in future periods as well. So we need to maximize the benefit of groundwater use, okay? Maximize the benefit of groundwater use across all these, or the discounted value of net benefits of groundwater use across all time periods, okay? So the myopic farmer, the status quo, the open access resource, there the farmers are just saying, okay, look, I have the capital for a tube well, okay, I'm just going to maximize my profits from farming today, extract the groundwater, I don't care about what happens to the water table level, I'll think about it next year, okay, and it repeats the process over and over until the groundwater stocks deplete. Here the social planner recognizes that, look, no, we need to leave a bit of this groundwater for the future as well, because we're going to get this benefit from leaving it in, if we leave a bit of the groundwater for future use, there's that benefit that our future generations can get. So so it's maximizing that discounted value of all these future benefit streams, not just the present period. Okay. So now let's look at these very simple kind of models of farmer behavior under each of these management schemes. So open access resources and optimal management. Okay, so here we have so this marginal willingness to pay for groundwater. Okay, so remember we said marginal willingness to pay is a downward, so because of the law of decreasing marginal utility, your marginal willingness to pay function is downward sloping. So your first unit, you might value the first unit of groundwater really highly, but the value of the second unit of groundwater might not be as high as the value that you attach to the first unit of groundwater. So similarly, the values attached to increasing units of groundwater are lower compared to those initial units. That's why your marginal willingness to pay for groundwater is downward sloping. So here, so WT is the units of groundwater extracted, PT is the price per unit of groundwater extracted, and at each price you can think of it as the marginal willingness to pay. All right, this is what you're willing to pay for each unit of groundwater. And G and K are just parameters, okay? They just define some relationship between WT and PT. All right. Oh, from G and K? Well, so basically they're relating sort of, once you collect data on prices and on willingness to pay, and you can run sort of statistical relationships and see, so how does, it's just to estimate some relationship between equating the units of groundwater to what you're willing to pay for it. Okay, so I mean here I've chosen a linear form, but they don't necessarily, the linear form makes it easier to understand, because I don't want to make this really complex, but longer times it could be exponential or so they could take different forms. So what PT, think about it as what you're willing to pay for each unit of groundwater. Okay, so it's look, the market price will be determined by the interaction with what the cost of groundwater is. Here, this is saying that if suppose if this was the price level, so it's relating, so if I draw this for you, hold on. So if I draw this for you, so if this is units of groundwater, and let's suppose I'll use, so this is dollars, or let's use rupees. So rupees per unit of groundwater. So this is giving me a downwards, so this is PT, and this is WT. This is basically saying, if suppose the price was this much, so what are you willing to pay? If this much, how many units of groundwater will you consume? But each level, but this is not necessarily the market price of the good, because that's determined by the interaction with the supply, right?
And in Pakistan, we do not have groundwater pricing. Am I right? Or we have groundwater pricing mechanism?
No, we don't have markets for groundwater. Yeah, we don't have markets for groundwater. So that's the idea. So that's what I'm trying to say, that what is the effective price of groundwater? Like, it's not just the cost of extracting it. It's beyond that. Okay, so the next thing is, 10 minutes? I'm over 10 minutes or 10 minutes left? Okay, that's, I can, yeah. Alright, so the next thing that we need to sort of think about is the marginal cost of extraction, right? So I said earlier that, as a farmer, or as a groundwater user, you basically install a tube well, right? Or a pump. And then there's a cost of, basically, energy cost of using that pump to extract groundwater. So here, the cost, PT, is a function of the C1H, basically. That's the energy cost of pumping a unit of groundwater from a depth of H units. So just think about, like, the deeper you get, as the water table falls, each unit, so not all units, but each additional unit of groundwater is more expensive to extract. Okay, so here again we have this linear, really kind of simple looking marginal cost curve. The PT is the price per unit of groundwater extracted here. Alright, now so I think Afreen and Elena, I think they've sort of introduced the stuff really well. And so they spoke about sort of differential equations and evolution, the difference between flow variables and stock variables, and sort of what are differential equations and what do they represent. So just to kind of like briefly summarize, so here this equation kind of represents the evolution of the stock of groundwater. So what is the stock of groundwater? This is essentially, if this is the aquifer, right? And this is, think about this as land, so this is where the farming is happening. And suppose this is your water table level, okay? So this is your water table level. This is your tube well, yeah? So here, you're extracting water from this aquifer, but there's this recharge, so here clouds, this is rainfall, okay? So now you're extracting groundwater, but there's this natural recharge of the aquifer, right? So here you have rainfall, which is, adding water to the aquifer. And then suppose there's this network of rivers and canals. So these are unlined canals and rivers, that water kind of seeps through the ground and replenishes groundwater, correct? That makes sense, right? Yes. So the idea is the evolution of the groundwater stock is what is coming out and what is going in. Okay, so the difference between that gives you the evolution. So today, whatever I take out, then something's going to go in, and the next period, the difference between that is going to give me next period's stock of groundwater. So R is the sort of natural recharge of the aquifer through rainfall and seepage through canals and rivers. Alpha is the return flow coefficient. So what is alpha? Minus WT is the extraction. So R is the water that's going in, WT I'm taking out, and alpha WT, basically when you irrigate land, some of that water is absorbed by the crops, right? But not all of it is. Some of it, a portion of it seeps back into the aquifer. So alpha WT represents the return flow. So whatever, that's depercolation, basically whatever you extract to irrigate, a portion of that water goes back, okay? So that's alpha WT measures that. H dot, I forgot to mention this. H, so this is essentially the height of the water table, right? So whatever's going in and coming out, this H is that water table height. So this is the water table height, and, okay, hold on, let me make this clear. So this is R plus alpha minus 1 into WT divided by AS. So this is the total volume of groundwater that is going in and coming out. If I divide that by the area of the aquifer, what do I get? You're going to get height, right? If I divide the total volume of water going in and out, this is a volume, I divide it by an area. So area could be this sort of area of the aquifer. If I divide it by the area, I'm getting the height of the aquifer, right? So this essentially is showing me how is the height of the water table going up and down over time. How is the height of the water table evolving over time? Because I'm dividing a volume by an area. Okay? So this H dot is the evolution over time of the height of the water table. Volume rate. Yeah, the rate, yeah, exactly. Okay. Alright. So under open access behavior, so what did we say? So we said, look, so farmers are maximizing net benefits at each time period for the current value of the stock variable, of what the height of the water table level is. Okay? Farmers want to use this groundwater to maximize their profits, right? That's what they're doing, that's the behavior. They want to maximize their profits. They want to maximize the value that they get from using groundwater, and they want to do it for what the current value of the height of the water table level is. Yeah? So the way to do that is, so if I said this is the marginal willingness to pay, this line here, and if I have a cost of extraction, hold on, this is the marginal cost of extraction. What do you think, how much, if this is the cost of extracting groundwater, this is the value that you derive from each additional unit of the groundwater, what do you think, how much groundwater are they going to consume? At what point are we going to lie on that curve? Why is it the point of intersection? Yeah, but why does it give the equilibrium? So look, this marginal willingness to pay is the value that you get from an additional unit of consuming groundwater, right? This cost, marginal cost, extraction cost is the value that you get from additional extractions of groundwater. So my total benefit is, for each unit, is this area under the marginal willingness to pay, right? As I increase my consumption, though that I'm getting additional benefits. So my total benefit is the sum of those marginal benefits, right, from consuming groundwater. And similarly, as I'm consuming more groundwater, there's an additional cost that I'm incurring. And if I add up those costs, that's my total cost of consuming that groundwater. I'm looking at a point where my net benefits, my total benefits, my net benefits, which is the difference between my total benefit of groundwater use and my total cost of groundwater use is maximized. That's the area under, the difference between the area under the marginal willingness to pay and the marginal cost curve. And I can assure you that area is maximized at this intersection point. Okay, anyway, so this is basically your equilibrium point, and that is what these myopic farmers do. They equate their marginal willingness to pay with their marginal cost curve, and of course they're subject to the evolution of the groundwater stock. So in each period they say, oh, look, my groundwater height, my water table level height is this. That gives me my marginal cost. I'm going to equate it to my marginal willingness to pay, and that will give me how much groundwater I'm going to consume in that period. So I take our groundwater, WT comes up. Next period, if WT goes up, what's going to happen to the height? It's going to go down, my marginal cost is going to go up. Then again, I'm going to think, okay, now this is my new marginal cost, how much water am I going to consume? I will equate my marginal willingness to pay with my new marginal cost, and then choose a new value of WT. And then, what's going to happen in the following period? Because now I've extracted a different level of WT, my height is again going to go down, but perhaps not as much as in the first period. And over time, you can see this evolution of the height of the water table and the amount of water that you're extracting. So, so here we have equations 1 and 2. And you can define them as a first order linear differential equation. So again, because I think the crowd here, the demographics are very diverse. So I didn't want to go into a lot of mathematical detail or jargon, but essentially I think Afreen and Elena probably gave an overview of this. But you together define the first order linear differential equation, and you use this integrating factor method to solve them, and that's going to give you solutions for HT and WT in terms of all these exogenous parameters of the model. And those exogenous parameters were like G, K, R, alpha, the area of the aquifer, etc. And so now you know how HT is a function of time, WT is a function of time, so you can draw what we call phase diagrams, which will show you what happens to the water table height over time. And similarly, because water table height is related to extraction, what happens to groundwater extractions over time? Okay? Alright, now compare that to optimal control, where we spoke about, here we don't have myopic farmers, they're looking at, so under open access resources, farmers are just concentrating on net benefits at each time period for the current state of the water table height. Here the social planner is maximizing net benefits across multiple time periods, okay? All the discounted value of these, of net benefit stream. And again, the benefit has to be discounted, so this is basically the discount factor. And again, you have the evolution of the groundwater stock. And somehow, they want to, look at what happens to, again, we need to solve this to see, now that we're enforcing this discounted value of the loss in future net benefits, we want to see what happens to our WT extractions over time and what happens to our water table levels over time. So one way of solving this is through the Hamiltonian system, and basically again, diverse demographics, etc. I am not doing justice to Hamilton, but just giving you an overview of what the process is. So you define what we call the present value Hamiltonian. That's just that function over there. That's lambda t right there. That lambda t is essentially what we call the marginal, so that idea of marginal user cost of water, remember? The loss in future net benefits owing to unit of extractions in the present. That lambda t is a reflection of that. And then we have these sort of necessary conditions for solving this system. So now, if you solve these, you're going to get a system of kind of complex differential equations. And again, so we need to we could solve them using these mathematical techniques. And again, you'll get these solutions for the evolution of the water table height over time and the evolution of groundwater extractions over time. And again, you can, because now HT is a function of time, the water table level is a function of time, your extractions are a function of time, again, you can draw these phase diagrams to evaluate these dynamics. And you can see that there's going to be this exponential convergence to these, what we call steady states, that eventually over time, the water table level is going to reach some level, converge to some level. Your extractions are going to converge to some level. Okay, so just as an example, so this is my friend Encana at the University of Zaragoza in Spain. Her and a co-author, this is a diagram looking at, it's essentially a phase diagram, so dynamics of the water table level and extractions over time under open access resources. So this is from an aquifer in Spain. And you can see that, so this is a much more complex model than the one I showed, but you can see that these blue lines, these blue, not lines, but these blue sort of histograms, this is a reflection of what's happening to the water table level over time. So remember when we solve these models, we're relating WT and HT to time. So you can see that the water table level is going down over time. Those extractions kind of remain sort of flat, but once the water table level has depleted, those extractions just, so this is the end of the aquifer essentially, it's depleted. Those extractions go to zero. Okay, so now compare, so this is under open access resources, and then here are the results for the water table level and water extraction under optimal control. So under optimal control, you can see that the water table level is pretty much steady throughout throughout the time span that they have. And initially the extractions have gone down, but they steadily go up and converge at this level. Okay? So what this is sort of representing is, because here farmers, through this optimal control method, that lambda t that I showed you, you're enforcing that cost of consuming groundwater in the present. That cost of future benefits in the present is being reflected in the prices of groundwater, and hence you have a better state of the aquifer under optimal management. And I guess I've run out of time, so I'll end it here. Thank you.
So my name is Bharat and I am a Canadian. So first of all, I ask you about the what form of the groundwater willingness pay. And in this start of lecture, you asked about the in future we will the shortage of the groundwater. And instead of all these mathematical relations, groundwater is also a rechargeable and renewable source. What is the scientific logic behind this lowering the groundwater?
So you need scientific knowledge instead of mathematics.
Okay,
If you
well,
have any-
yeah, I do understand your question. So, okay, that is a good question. So look, this topic is very interdisciplinary in nature. So what I presented here, so it is a reason that remember that H dot form, that was the evolution of the groundwater stock over time. That model comes from hydrologists. I'm not a hydrologist myself, I'm an economist. I'm borrowing from hydrologists and then, putting in these kind of, these economic models on top of that. So the idea is that this environmental economics is a very interdisciplinary field. So a lot of the process is informed by both economists and scientists. So we can, of course, make these models way more, and they are way more complex as well. What I've showed you is a very, very simple model, right? But you can make the hydrology really sophisticated and derive much more sort of fancier results as well. So that's where scientists come in, and as long as they have the data and the models, then we can sort of add our sort of econ components on top of that. And that's the beauty of the field, right? It's not just sort of scientists and on one side of the room and economists on the other. We're all in this together and coming up with solutions together as well.
Hello sir. Is dynamic allocation and optimal allocation same?
Well, again, I think, it's a matter of semantics, but I think if you think in economics, if you're thinking about if it's an optimal allocation, if it's a dynamic problem, then the optimal allocation is a dynamic, is a dynamic allocation. But it's again, I don't think you should get too bogged down by the terminology. It's about looking at so I just go with sort of optimal allocation as the word, as the go-to phrase and such things.
For better understanding, I would like to know that in case of other natural resources, for example oil, when its price is set, other factors would be considered than extraction.
Mm-hmm.
And to whom that price is paid,
Yeah.
and can those same principles be used for pricing groundwater?
Well, so, okay, that's a good question. So oil industry is a little complicated because, so when we spoke about open access resources, we said anybody, has, the costs of buying a tube well have actually gone down tremendously in the last decade or so. In that sense, water, this is a competitive market, if you even think about water as a market. In the oil industry, on the other hand, we have, the market structure is very different. It's a cartel, right? It's a cartel between so they kind of look at their, they generate what are called response functions, and they kind of restrict the supply and control prices. So I don't think we want that kind of situation when it comes to groundwater, where we heavily regulating, this natural resource that comes to sort of, generating benefits, especially for sort of subsistence farmers. And again, like I'm talking about groundwater pricing and saying that, look, extraction costs are not enough, you want to like enforce this additional cost. But if that comes at the expense of the subsistence farmer, then I probably wouldn't advocate that policy either. So we also need to think about these block structures. When it comes to effective pricing, for smaller farmers, perhaps we can give them those initial units of groundwater at a very low price. But when it comes to large farmers who are extracting large quantities of groundwater, or large corporations are extracting those larger units of groundwater have to be priced at a different rate structure. So, but the idea of like cartels in groundwater markets is probably be detrimental to like the well-being of subsistence farmers. So I wouldn't advocate for a market like that.
All right, so I think we, is there a question?
This is very ideal margin situation where we have demand and supply, simply marginal willingness to pay and margin cost. So can we include margin external cost with this in this model as well? Because small farmers are facing like externalities that is created by like large farm sizes like Nestle and other. So it means actions adopted by large farmers is being faced by the small farmers. So how we can include this phenomenon in this model?
Absolutely, excellent question. That's being done, colleagues at UC Davis actually, when it comes to fisheries, Jim Weiland and James Santry. So they've done spatial analysis of fisheries management. So basically what's happening is that if you're a large farmer, I'm a small farmer, so I'm talking about temporal dynamics, right, over time. But if you extract groundwater, there's less left for me, you're enforcing an externality. So how do you over space account for those loss and net benefits? So it's far more sophisticated models, which already people, so look, so this is, I didn't go into these extensions, but people are working on those, and so you account for that spatial externality along with that temporal but those that can come into your sort of benefit functions and the way you define your extraction equations and the evolution of the groundwater stock. So that can be done. Yeah, thanks.
There's such reality of great farming because they are doing investments with them. These small farmers, those who are owners of the land, are now becoming tenants because they are selling. So this is also a structural change. It should also be a part of such models.
Yeah.
All right, so I think maybe we could have to leave it here because we're already a little over time. Let's give a big round of applause to for putting together all this so beautifully. I mean, the whole sort of 6 or 7 lectures on analysis.